Welcome to Philosophy 101, Introduction to My Philosophy. So if you've been watching the Life blog series, which eventually I might rename the Peace Plan Proposal or Prophecy, then you are aware of the fact that I have presented a peace plan to take the world to a level of peace. And like most things, the way we live our life or determine things is often based on philosophies. Uh, so I'm presenting my philosophy. Now, I have studied in philosophy. I mentioned that in the other series. And I'm kind of presenting this as if I were teaching a class, which is not exactly fair because it's the first time I'm doing it. And I have not done it in terms of proper teaching techniques where I have developed proper lesson plans. I'm doing it more of where I have some points I know I want to cover, and I'm going to talk about those and on them. So at times my speech might seem rambling. I might not be focusing on looking at the camera so that it appears like I'm looking at you, but rather thinking to get an idea formulated properly in my mind. Eventually, I would like to take all of these videos and maybe edit them into one uh, video that would serve as a, if you will, philosophical dissertation, a video philosophical dissertation of what my whole philosophical belief system is. Which, even the word "my" in this system is both valid and invalid. Okay, because we will touch on philosophies that I learned back in university that at the time when I heard them and was taught them kind of went, oh, that's just stupid, to coming to understand the point of view that they were talking about and how it does actually fit into my model of the existence, but from a different point of view. So, in the beginning of this course, we will talk about what my philosophy is and what it's based on, how I structured it, how I developed it. We will discuss philosophers from the past, but please understand that I do not have a necessarily a clear memory of which philosopher said which thing. Like I might say, oh, this philosopher said this, and it turned out to be the wrong philosopher. Don't worry about that, because like most things, uh, something I learned from actually my high school history teacher was it's not about memorizing certain facts. It's more about understanding why things happen, why things operate the way they do. And that might be the very good start for our philosophy class to begin with. You need to understand what philosophy really is. Like many things in the world, there is what's known in the field or in the industry and what's believed to be common by society. And many do not really understand what philosophy is. It's been misclassified, and not actually just by society, even in a way in academia. It's arguable that philosophy has been misunderstood and misclassified. So it's actually listed as an arts program, and in a way understandable because it is not science in the sense of how science has tended to look at things. From based on the scientific method. It's not science in that sense of using a scientific method. But interestingly enough, that scientific method is based on philosophy. So there's a very strong interlinking. It's like philosophy, in a way, is the study of knowledge and how we have gained that knowledge. Now, that's very important to understand. Okay? So, in a way, it is like the science of science. It helps determine that the scientific method that was chosen is valid based on logical, deductive reasoning. Now, we need to understand that we hear the word logic all the time in the world. Once again, this is one of these terms that is not clearly understood as how it is used specifically in either mathematics or in philosophy. And in fact, the logic used in mathematics is different than the logic that is used in philosophy. Well, I shouldn't say that. The way to look at philosophy is like all knowledge. It's like the study of everything. It's not just the study of science, but it's also the study of beyond science, which is where the metaphysics comes in. See, as one of the culminating courses in philosophy is the study of metaphysics beyond the physical. And oftentimes that's the portion that I guess you'd say hipsters might see as being, philosophy in the hipster sense of where it's about more of what you believe rather than based on logic. Okay? So, philosophy should affect how one lives their life, and it absolutely does. But philosophy, like most things of value, must be a growing thing. If you just have one philosophy and stick to it for life, your philosophy is dead. It is not vibrant. Now, some spiritualities have used this discussion of a growing living thing to refer to their holy writings as being living words. You have to understand it in a living context. You always have to apply it into the living world. So it becomes growing. And it's not really that those writings ever changed. It's that our understanding of them grows as we become more educated, more evolved as a species, as our knowledge grows. And the same happens with most things in life. They must grow or they tend to die. This is just one of the rules of life. Life is about growth. So, philosophy is the study of everything, in essence, but particularly focusing on the study of knowledge and how we gain it. And as I mentioned, the scientific method, is developed based on intentional logic. Now, intentional logic is the type of logic we talk about in philosophy. It's where we're talking about the logic of words. Okay, so many people often get into discussions in philosophy and say, oh, that's just semantics, which means, the meaning of words and how they affect and are used. Yes, and that's very important. That's what people don't understand. Understanding and making sure we are using the words in the same context is extremely vital to truly understanding each other and what we're saying. If I say a word with one meaning and you are hearing it with another meaning, we don't have genuine communication. And then we get into problems. Now, true philosophers really are searching for truth. That's their job. They don't care what society thinks is right or wrong. They analyze it, but they do or should not feel obligated to try and find proofs or reasonings that justify it. They should be looking intently for the truth and only the truth. And that's a very dangerous thing in our society. So, in a way, philosophy has been getting downplayed at a time when philosophy is needed more than it has ever been needed before. Because as we've seen, our world has become very divided, especially since the internet has become worldwide. In the last 10 years alone, we have seen a huge division in the most, arguably the most powerful, militarily powerful nations in the world became completely divided. Extremes, and very hateful extremes to each other. Each one honestly believing the other will be the downfall of their civilization. And only listening to viewpoints that support their already determined beliefs. That doesn't work for philosophy. I don't care whether you're on the right or you're on the left. And in fact, in many of your issues, you guys have it backwards and have yourselves mixed up from your own base philosophies. Arguably, one could analyze each of your sides and argue how at certain points throughout them, they actually made an illogical support decision and then doubled down on it repeatedly. And it has happened for both sides. Now, I'm not American, so I'm not sitting there with a particular bias. Many of you who might hear me talk might want to argue that, oh, I'm one of those lefties. And in a way, you're kind of right in certain regards. There are certain things on the left side of political structure that I absolutely agree with. But my own viewpoint is I am the ultimate conservative. Conservatives want to keep things the way they are, or in many cases, go back to the way things were. I want to go back, and the philosophy I will present will justify why this is the only way we can proceed with a proper peace. The structure of how we define that peace might vary from my peace plan. But ultimately, the end result has to be true, as far as I can tell, in all peace plans. And here's what has to be true. As mentioned in my life blog series for the peace plan, we tend to, in our nature, want to divide everything into two choices, white and black. Now, in that video system, I already described why that in a way isn't true. We've come to learn that white and black are make up all sorts of shades of gray. In fact, white is all colors combined. Black is the absence of all colors. So they are opposites to each other, but white actually contains all the colors of the rainbow. So, what does that have to do with philosophy in our world? Well, as I mentioned, philosophy is the study. Okay, I'm checking the time. I don't want to go. I want to make sure all of these videos are under an hour. But I'm hoping to keep them more around a half-hour mark. So, back to this dichotomous system we have. We want to look at everything as being black and white, right and left. We already discussed that in the political sphere. Mine, yours. It's even in some of our languages, okay? English particularly, very divisive. And in fact, a lot of our structures makes things either good or bad, okay? Words that technically mean the same thing have one that we tend to use in good situations and one we use in bad situations. Odor versus scent, for example. Both are the smell of something, but odor tends to insinuate a not pleasant smell, whereas scent tends to imply a positive scent or a good scent. Or a good smell. So, dichotomy, we definitely do this. It's in our nature to want to make everything black and white. Now, is that our base nature? That's hard to tell. In fact, what is our base nature is extremely hard to tell because we are not living in our natural environment anymore and haven't been since we started structuring societies. Yes, believe it or not, I'm the ultimate conservative because I want to go back to where each person is responsible for their own lives, their own rules, their own code. Now, that's something that some right-wing people think should be as long as it falls inside their guidelines of what they believe to be right and wrong. No, mine is that each person has to decide that. Now, immediately someone will want to jump and label that anarchy. And in fact, that did get labeled as anarchy. One of these other mislabeled things. Anarchy actually, by word meaning, means absence of rule. But the philosophy that actually brought up anarchy in a way was more trying to bring up the concept that our world has to get to a stage. The ideal is where each and every individual will have complete control over their actions, their choices, their existence. Now understand that. Back when this was suggested, naturally, you're looking at a time when, and we still have this a lot today to some extent, where barroom fights took place, where feuds took place over the stupidest things that people would kill each other and duel to the death over. And so people looked at it and said, well, yeah, as if that can never happen. And there's many of us today who may want to look at the world and say the exact same thing. Yuck! As if you can let people do what they want. Look at this guy who just did the world's stupidest thing. Yes. Or look at this guy who just killed thousands of people with his stupid thing or his bad choices. You know? Yes, all of those are true. But here's the problem with those things you want to point to. All they do is prove that we do not live in a healthy world. So, as an analogy, look at it this way. People are like the kernels of popcorn in a hot air popcorn maker. Yeah, you can point to any one of those kernels and point out, oh, look at that sucker's going to explode. And eventually it does. It's going to blow. It does. But it's because of the environment it's in. Yes, all this evidence we have of people being violent, uncaring to others, are all factors that our world has created for them. Not our world, our society. What we as people chose to believe in, chose to structure our world around, were beliefs that people cannot be trusted and will explode. They are not part of us. They are our enemy. And our whole world was structured on that. Every civilization has always worried about other civilizations wanting them, wanting their territory, wanting what they have. I shouldn't say every civilization has. Some of those that didn't no longer exist. So one could argue, well, they should have. Maybe. Then again, their civilizations actually lived their principles, whereas the surviving civilizations did not actually live the best principles of humanity. We look back at most of the dominant countries in the world, and at some point, they've had violence at the very root of what they've done. Now, in our modern age, the power has moved away, not to say that Europe doesn't have any power anymore, but Europe is not out colonizing the way it had been. Now it's had to kind of pull back into itself, and some of the colonies they've created or other areas that existed that they ignored have become more dominant. That's all. So we have a couple superpowers in Asia. Well, I guess more than a couple. Superpower in North America. All of this based on each worrying about the other taking what they have. We've developed our whole societies based on this. Getting along has only come down to trying to protect what we already have. Laws are about protecting what we already have. So why would I want to go back to a time before all of that? It's not about going back to a time before that. It's going back to the reality of we come into this life with free will, but what was free will 6,000 years ago to coming into life with free will now are very different things, because we are all immediately you could say indoctrinated into a system, but that's not it. We are born into an already existing civilized structure. We are born under law. Now, what does that mean? Well, that sounds like a good thing. And in fact, we've been led to believe the law is a good thing. But you need to understand, from a philosophical point of view, from a logical point of view, laws are the giving up of your personal freedom. A law creates restrictions that the citizens have to agree to and abide by, or there is some kind of negative consequence. Laws, by definition, and not just by definition, but the very fact or essence of what they do, take power from individual citizens and give it to the government or the power structure. So although laws in certain regards protect you from certain things happening, they do it by taking away from you to begin with your power. And as certain artworks have pointed out, and that's something to understand, there's maybe a big difference with and why philosophy got categorized as an arts rather than a science category. And that is simply because we are beyond science. It's not just limited to the structure of the scientific method. We study things in a more general sense that gave rise to the scientific method. But in the scientific method, you're forced to have to be able to control all the variables and control things. The study of life does not always allow that. And it certainly doesn't allow it on the macro scale. It can be done on the micro scale, but not in the macro scale. The small scale compared to the large scale. Okay? So, here's what I want you to do for the start of our philosophy course. Because we live in a dichotomous society, I am going to attempt to, at times, look at it's either this choice or this choice and help each group understand. You will make the choice. I will help you show what the logical points of that choice are when I can. So, first thing I want you to do is to close your eyes and to imagine an orb, a sphere, a ball, if you will. Okay? And decide, is it white or is it black? Okay? Yes, we're going to break it down into that simple. And the reason we're doing that is because what this ball represents, this orb represents, your sphere represents, is existence. So, what color had you envisioned? White or black? Now, right off the bat, there's an automatic assumption to assume that white is the good choice and black is bad, because in many cultures, that's the way it works. But that's not what this is about. It's a way of starting. And as I started off this video, or at some point the talk about the philosophy with the in the beginning, many good books and writings have started with lines like in the beginning. Now some have gone on to say there was nothing. Well, those would be those that chose black. Others say in the beginning there was chaos. That would fall under the white. And you might be going, what? Chaos isn't good. Why is it white? Because one is the belief that existence is everything, and the other is the basis of existence started as nothing. And there is not a right or a wrong. These just appear to be opposing viewpoints. So, where am I going with this? Well, let's say you envisioned it to be black, and you believe in the beginning there was nothing, and then a creative force. Now, I realize, and I don't want to get into fighting with religions, okay? The different religions have different viewpoints and ways of saying this, whether you believe there was a God, there were gods, but somehow some kind of creative force or intelligence or something, see, doesn't necessarily have to be actually an intelligence, but just something caused a change in how we looked at nothing, so that it became something. Not just something, it became everything. Now, whether a divine force called Yahweh, I am, whatever, actually in the Roman tradition, it's not even Zeus, it was pre-Zeus who created Gaia, if I remember correctly. All of these things point to one thing: the belief that there was nothing and then something came into existence. And if you're white, that's the chaos. Well, chaos is just a matter of how we look at things. It's a case of us not understanding the order of things. So you are right. Existence may have always been the state of chaos, but it's only when you understand how to look at it, you realize it's not chaos. It's all of existence. But nobody inside that orb has the ability to see all of the orb as a whole. So, from anybody inside, it's easy to see it as chaos because it's incomprehensible as a whole. Even if you can imagine that it must be part of a whole, you cannot actually imagine the whole, if you will. And yet that's what we're doing. I said, imagine either a sphere, white or black, and it represents all existence. So these appear like very divergent, non-existent belief systems. Well, now I'm going to teach you why, in a way, if I personally will want to name my philosophy the philosophy of reconciliation. At one point, I thought of naming it the philosophy of opposites because of the law of opposites. Usually, if something's true, the truly exact opposite is true. So, opposites, how are they true? Well, both can be true. It's a matter of perspective. And it's because everything and nothing are the same. Well, think about it. If your sphere, your white sphere, is everything that can exist, now, past, present, future, all of it, all time exists inside your sphere. All dimensions, all realities, everything. Doesn't matter how many times we can manage to find new levels of dimensions, if you will, alternate ways of seeing the universe, multi-universes. All of that doesn't matter. If it exists, it's in your sphere of white. It's everything. Nothing exists outside that sphere. In fact, there isn't really a sphere. Nothing exists outside of that existence you've imagined. You might go, well, what about the things that don't exist? That's impossible. Wait, what? It's impossible for them not to exist because inside existence we can think about the possibility of things that don't exist in existence. And that thought makes anything outside of existence part of existence. Yes, the fact that we can think that something, that there could be nothing beyond existence and think of the concept of nothing creates a nothing, but it's not actually beyond existence anymore. We have brought the concept of it into existence. So it is impossible for anything to be beyond existence. It is everything. Now, let's look at the converse. There's nothing. Nothing. Well, similar to everything, nothing would be everything. If there is nothing, then that nothing is everything. And maybe that minor millisecond was somehow some thought in nothing, recognizing that it was everything. Or maybe it was just the thought Descartes had. I think, therefore I am. Maybe the nothing just thought, I am. Nothing. I am. And it became everything. And everything is chaos when you're inside it. It's very hard to find order. It's very easy to look at any point in the history we are aware of and see how much violence and disorder and chaos has taken place. In fact, the best scientific and modern theories is still based on the Big Bang Theory in terms of how the physical world came into creation. Yes, there's milliseconds. I forget how small the period is before the Big Bang actually would have taken place, in which they're not sure what happened, but the rest of it they can deduce from what they've seen. And people want to look at it as the Big Bang as an explosion that happened. No, people. In our universe, and as far as we know in most universes, but in alternate dimensions, alternate realities, not all universes are necessarily created the same way. But anyway, in ours, big explosion is not something that happened in the past. It is happening. We are still exploding out from the center of the galaxy. We evolved inside of an explosion that is still happening. That is incredible. That is against mathematical odds that are phenomenal, that are probably incomprehensible amounts. And one could easily argue that because we are taking place inside the violence of an explosion, it certainly justifies why our societies become fairly divided and violent. But reconciliation kind of shows that everything and nothing are the same. If you were everything and had no parts that you're aware of, you're just everything. You're the totality of it all. Are you anything? Think about it. How many people have spent time alone with themselves feeling like they are nothing when they're just by themselves? When they're all alone. Many, many people avoid spending time with themselves. See? Spend time with yourselves, you start to realize that you might be your entire existence, your body, your mind, your soul. But when you are all just by yourself, it's very easy to feel like nothing. You are the totality of all yourselves. In a way, you are the God of your body. And in fact, there's definitive scientific research to prove that what we think mentally does definitively affect the body. We haven't mastered how to do that consciously, but it does exist. That has been proven beyond a doubt. So, what are we? How do we get along? How does this help, this dichotomous opposition? Well, as I said, whether you're everything or you're nothing, whether that was your belief in the start of things, the two are the same. Might not seem like it, but they are. So, let's start on the nothing. Let's say you are the nothing and you're one who believes in a divine being. The divine being with in this nothing, I want there to be something. I want there to be everything. Well, if you have nothing, how do you create everything? In perfect balance. For every one, there's a negative one. That's simple. The totality of all existence, all the variety of dimensions, everything that exists, balances out to nothing. But when looked at from within, is everything. Infinity. Infinity. And in fact, one could argue the numbers are so great, we are looking at infinity times infinity times infinity. It's probably actually infinity to the infinitieth power, if you will. Okay? There are so many different dimensions, so many different ways to look at things, so many alternate realities. And science is coming to realize this more and more. So, my philosophy is the philosophy of reconciliation. I'm going to show you how what has often been seen as opposites end up working together, end up really being just different ways of looking at the same reality. We will see by the end how in all reality, predestination, fate, the idea that you cannot change what's been preordained. Your life, you might think you're making choices, but you're not really. All of this stuff had to have happened. We'll see how that's both true and false. And we'll see how both free will is both true and false. But how, in a way, both of them work together, just like white and black. Okay? It's actually, in a way, a balance of things. When you are properly and consciously in control of your life, you do have more free will than when you just let life help you flow along a river, where you just go where life leads. Okay? Now, it's not to say that you got to fight against the river all the time. That's not what I'm saying at all. There's a time to flow. There's a time to fight. And fight does not mean violence, okay? Fighting this just means sometimes, to take the path you want to take, there's going to be an obstacle you have to overcome. Or you have to find another way around. And there's the other key. A lot of times it's about finding alternate choices. A lot of times we get locked into this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want, just what I want, just what I want. And it becomes an impossible dream because we've made it too perfect. Unattainable because it becomes too perfect, if you will. However, flexibility. Sometimes you discover that that thing you wanted or that opportunity you wanted wasn't really what you wanted, but something similar to it. So by being flexible, you find your way to your true desires and preferences and happiness. Now, happiness is something else we need to talk about in a future lesson, but let me say this about happiness. It is only dependent inside yourself. It is not dependent by outside circumstances, okay? And the other thing I'll teach you about this is many of the lessons you will learn in life. If you are a true truth seeker, you will have to remind yourself of the lessons over and over and over again. Okay? Because it's very easy to fall back, especially in our world with the way it operates now. It's very easy to get into the defensive mode rather than staying focused on remaining positive to who you are and your belief system. It's very easy to get knocked off that. Any kind of financial setback tends to knock us off of our path because of the way our system works. Any kind of trauma, whether it's physical or loss of somebody. I mean, loss is a part of life. Losing our loved ones. Eventually, we all lose our parents. That sort of thing, or other family. That sort of thing is unavoidable, but it's how we deal with it. So, happiness is not based on what's happening outside you. Happiness is based on within. However, the purpose of the Peace Plan videos is exactly that, to make outside of us healthier so that it's easier for people to discover their true selves and what they truly want to do and how they truly want to contribute to our civilization, to our species. So we'll end it there. First introduction to philosophy. The philosophy of reconciliation. That's all about taking what often appears as dichotomous and finding a way to make them be recognized for what they are. Okay? Usually the same, or two sides of the same coin in many cases. What appear to be complete opposites are often exactly the same thing, just looked at differently. Okay, we'll leave that there for now. Bye.